Hello, thank you so much for being here. If you are standing in the back, please come down and join us. Or if you're sat on a back row and you want to get involved in this conversation, which you definitely do, come to a closer roll. Let's make it feel a bit more homely. I'll do my own introduction if that's okay. My name is Anisah Osman Britton. I'm a startup life reporter at Sifted. We're the Financial Times-backed media company where I get to write about really cool people building really cool shit every day, which I love. I don't do any of the bullshit valuation stuff, luckily. And I also work at WVCE, which is the Women in VC platform to get more women investing as well as more women up the ranks in VC. But today I am joined by a fantastic panel, and we're going to be talking about emerging markets, what to learn from them, how to invest in them, and what we're excited about next. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Ervin, to do a quick introduction.
Yeah, quick introduction from my end. Hello, everybody. My Ervin, originally from Slovenia, but lived quite a global cosmopolitan profile, lived in multiple countries. Now working as an investment manager at T.Capital. T.Capital is Deutsche Telekom's strategic investment arm.
That was quick. Hello, everyone. My name is Tunya. I'm from 500 Emerging Europe. It's a 70 million euros fund. We invest in early stage founders from Central Eastern Europe and Turkey. I live in San Francisco. I'm originally Turkish. I also lived very globally myself as well. I lived in Istanbul for a couple of years. I lived in Budapest for a couple of years. Now I live in San Francisco. I think that's it. Have the mic.
Got one, yeah. Hi, guys. A lot of familiar faces from last year's. Nice to see you again. I'm Toomas, as you guys already know. I'm from Estonia, running a family office, investing everywhere, especially in the beginning companies, early stage companies, and been doing that last 15 years.
And now we want to quickly check in with you. Who are you? If you are a VC, can you give us a wave? One, bless you. If you are a startup, you are going to be hounded. If you are a startup, can you raise your hand? There's the VC there in the front, just you can find him later. And if you are an operator building at a startup or building at a company, put your hand up. Some of you put your hand up twice or not at all. So we've got a nice mixture of people. I want to set the scene a little bit. Can you talk to me about what an emerging market actually means? And maybe within that answer, explain to me why are they often overlooked by investors when it is that we talk about them as being such a rich area for disruption?
Yes, absolutely. I think the very notion of something being emerging is often unfair to the companies and the startups who are working as equally or sometimes harder than the companies for so-called developed markets. So from my perspective and the perspective of T.Capital and Deutsche Telekom, we have a mandate to invest globally, but we place a special focus into companies that are coming from the areas where Deutsche Telekom as a group operates. One of these areas includes also Croatia, where Hrvatski Telekom, for example, is known as a very strong partner to the young companies here. And what does it mean to be from an emerging market, and why are they often overlooked? I think, first of all, it's just the maturity of the capital markets, right? Often, if you have a startup with two similar KPIs, it takes way more energy, efforts, and relationship capital to kind of convince the investment committees to invest into such companies, right? Often there are restrictions by LPs and other parties to kind of do investment in that space. But I think we're successfully managing to solve some of these challenges by building some of the winners coming from this, from the global ecosystem. So I'm very optimistic about so-called emerging markets. I think they will soon, plenty of them, converge with mature markets as investors will realize that there's a lot of alpha that can be mined with amazing teams, phenomenal teams being built out of it, way more capital efficient oriented companies, global oriented companies. So overall, I'm pretty bullish about the developments with, of course, some caveats that we can later talk about.
I love how you totally jumped to my next question as well, but I'd like to ask you the same. Could you tell me a little bit about what you view as an emerging market?
Of course, actually, Ervin defined emerging market pretty well. Maybe I might talk a little bit about what makes emerging Europe, what we call emerging Europe, which is like part of Central Eastern Europe, also Baltics as well, but it also definitely has more different characteristics. But I think like what makes emerging Europe different than emerging markets is that emerging Europe likes and like more tend to create global unicorns, and in emerging markets usually tend to create more local unicorns, which we definitely find a lot of examples of that in, for example, like in Middle East, in Southeast Asia. But when you look at the European, especially emerging European unicorns, the revenues predominantly coming from the US. There are really good examples of that, like Infobip is a really good example, as well as some very good Hungarian candidates like Xion, Bitrise. So yeah, I mean, definitely that makes it different. And yeah, I think that's it. Like, for example, this is why in emerging Europe, as a fund, we actually encourage our founders to move to the US, especially to the Bay Area, because we know that actually the rule of thumb of creating a multi-billion-dollar company from the emerging Europe is to have early design partners from the US, have that high revenue growth from the enterprises early on. So this is why we encourage them to go to the US. Of course, there are other aspects of it, like cultural aspects, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that US is the only play in town. I would define emerging market a bit differently, maybe more from the standpoint of a beginning of a company, very, very early on of the company. And I would describe it like this. Emerging market is a market where early startup financing is not yet available due to the fact that older finance system banking doesn't allow them to grow, doesn't give them the resources, and the local angel investors aren't yet tapped into that sort of a thing. So the first unicorns, the first exits, the first success stories are not emerged yet. This is the emerging market. As soon as that happens, those same startup founders start investing back into the same economies, into the same markets, and that becomes not an emerging market anymore. This is a market where you can already grow, you have finance, you have everything available, you have knowledge available because people have done this before. So a good example out of this may be Estonia versus Lithuania. Whereas Estonia had Skype, we had our first ecosystem growing up, we had our first investors thanks to Skype, and last 15 years we've been doing rather well. Now we see that Lithuania is growing way faster. They haven't had that sort of success with investments. They have bootstrapped much more, but thanks to that, their companies are maybe a bit more ready for what's happening now in the market because they are already revenue creating, they are more ready for the later stage investments, and therefore, yet again, not emerging anymore.
Let's stick with Estonia for 1 second. Do you want to jump in, please?
Yeah, like I might add something. So I totally agree with Toomas, but like I think again Baltics have totally different than the rest of what we call emerging Europe. But I think the one and maybe most important thing that as a similarity is, so even like 15, 20 years ago, Estonia wouldn't compare itself as an emerging market to the emerging market that we know, which is the Middle Eastern and Southeast Asian market, but it would compare itself to Germany, to the UK, or to the closer Western European countries, and which is actually the characteristic of the emerging Europe.
Weirdly enough, we compared ourselves to Silicon Valley most of the time. So, I mean, if you're going to compare
but
to the best,
like that.
Compared to the best now, we don't like that anymore because, I mean, we're better.
Good. Sticking with Estonia for a second and talking about that emerging sort of market narrative of going from where we would have written about you from a UK standpoint as an emerging market, say 10, 15 years ago, maybe actually even 7 years ago, to now talking about you as most unicorns per capita and all that good stuff that we see in the headlines. What do you think, aside from that being the angel investments, do you think has created an ecosystem and a culture of success that has led to this?
I mean, first and foremost, of course, those same earlier founders that have made exits giving back to the community. That would be the biggest thing ever happening. Thanks to the fact that those early investors got a lot of traction also in United States and Western investors, then these connections come to play. And that's how you basically drag your ecosystem out from emerging to emerged. Because you get presence, you get understanding that that company there by the Russian border isn't some sort of wasteland, but it's actually real people building real things, and stuff can be built out of there.
Ervin.
Yes, I think it's also about the mindset, right? Maybe not to go too much into philosophy and history of certain things. Certain regions, especially in Europe, have been for 250 years or 500 years under the part of different empires where the population there typically wasn't allowed to kind of form any entrepreneurial ventures as such, right? Which has effect, especially from the region where I come from, which is the Southeast Europe, right? Where now for many years after, let's say, we have a unique opportunity where everybody can be entrepreneurial, but we've seen that, let's say, the mindset has been changing in a positive way over the last 5 years, and I'm very, very happy about that. I think the successful exits of companies, Croatian companies, Romanian companies out there, IPOs, I think it's all shifting the momentum. So besides angel investing, Toomas, what I would like to add is this mindset change, right? We can build something, we can do something. And in this mindset, what I would encourage every single founder here is to think globally from day one. I know you maybe want to have attraction with the customers in the local market. You think you can win some smaller, I don't know, local banks or customers in a faster way. Yes, but have in mind that if you really want to succeed at the highest level, I mean, depends also what kind of success you're searching for, you should be having this global mindset. And I think we operate really well from that perspective. And again, I will talk maybe stronger on this region specifically where I'm from, but we have amazing basketball players, amazing tennis players. They're all globally well known. I think it's time we translate this into entrepreneurial ventures as well.
Yes, spokespersons matter, absolutely. But, and I would like to add that shift in ideology and understanding comes through all of these priorly mentioned things, from having the access to those first investments. And if you want to build a billion-dollar company, if you're approaching an investor, then you want to tell the investor that you're building a billion-dollar company, right? You want to build a unicorn. But if you want to build a unicorn, you cannot build a unicorn out of the market in Croatia, in Estonia, in Slovenia, because the market just isn't there. Therefore, going global is the only way. I agree with you.
But what Estonia has done really well, and I guess I was trying to lead you to before, trying to lead a horse to water, was you have this idea of a sandbox in Estonia, which is you test locally to make sure everything works, and that's the role of policy, and then take it out globally. So what is that role of policy in emerging markets? And obviously there's also a role in media, if I may say so myself, of telling the story. So can we talk a little bit about policy and media in emerging market success?
I mean, policies, it's a two-edged sword. One way, policy ensures that everybody has a level playing field and everybody has the same rules and regulations and everybody would act the same. On the other hand, it hampers innovation. It hampers the ability to do things differently. Well, let's just say this. The scariest sentence in English language is the government is here to help. So over-regulation hasn't helped anybody, and that over-regulation actually, as I said, limits the amount of innovation and the amount of good ideas that can be implemented.
Tunya, I want to come to you because I think, well, let's talk a little bit about finding talent, but I find it really fascinating that you're sat in San Francisco with a mandate to invest in emerging markets like Istanbul, as is the name of our panel, somewhere. Not on there. Can you explain to me a little bit about how that strategy plays out for you?
So as a geographically mandated venture capital fund, our geography is Central Eastern and Turkey, as I mentioned while introducing myself. So actually, as a VC, to stand out from the crowd, there are actually a couple of things that we can predominantly do. One of them is talent mapping. So for us, the most important thing is talent, as a fund who invests in inception stages, idea stages. So for us, we predominantly go to engineers and big tech companies and big startups, growth stages, like I talk, like, I think my whole day, 50% of my time is spent on talking to engineers in OpenAI, Anthropic, in Meta, everywhere, in other big tech companies, just to understand if they would like to start their companies one day. So that's the best way of getting to know the talent, because whenever they start a company, it's really, really, really late for us as a very small, like when you compare to the other funds in the Bay Area. We are a very small fund, we are locally focused. There are like a very limited number of things we can provide to the founder, and these actually values are accumulated on very early stages, like idea stages, product building stages. We actually introduce them to design partners in the Bay Area, small, medium, large companies. So these are actually very important for the early stages, and we can build that trust, build that communication with the founders very early on.
Say I'm a founder, though, and I'm sat maybe here in this room right now, and maybe I haven't worked at an Anthropic, I haven't worked at a Meta, and I'm building something in whatever it is. You're sat in San Francisco, you're sat in Tallinn, you're sat... So I actually don't know. Where are you sat most of the time? You're traveling all the time.
I'm actually based in Hamburg in Germany,
There we go.
but Hamburg is not known as, let's say, the most entrepreneurial city in Germany. It's mostly old money, so most of my job is just traveling around and meeting companies.
I was going to say, you're never there. How do these people find you? Let's talk about the practicalities of being from an emerging market and trying to access capital. You've got the mic, let's go.
Okay. Yeah, maybe if to start on that note, I think it's... there's a lot of, I would call, there was a great interview a couple days ago in Harry Stebbings' show, like a famous VC show, where one of the main operators, he was a former chief operating officer of ServiceNow, said, you should be aware of seagull VCs. What are seagull VCs? And apologies for the wording, are the ones that come in, shit on the company, request a lot of materials to be provided, and then just leave without any sort of investment or follow-up, right? There's a lot of seagull VCs and a lot of tourist VCs that I would encourage every startup or operator here to be very aware, careful of, right?
Could you define what a tourist VC is, please?
I think the tourist VCs that are coming into emerging markets are like, okay, once a year I come in, I'm looking for the startups that are meeting the KPIs or the ones that are according to my metrics. I will talk to them, and then I'll try to convince them to take my money and leave. I'm not interested in general landscape of the ecosystem. I'm not interested, in learning how the market works. I'm not interested in what people are building at the moment there. And I think most of the tier one VCs, including tier one VCs in Europe, are also operating it that way. I mean, you have offices in London saying you're covering, I don't know, Eastern Europe, for example, which I don't mind. Tunya doesn't go to San Francisco covering, let's say, Eastern Europe, but I think the problem is often they're not with boots on ground. So specifically in my case, to not take too long, we've taken a pledge in our company to visit local ecosystems at least once per quarter, which means talking to sometimes just engineers who are suggested to us by Deutsche Telekom, in that space who are good. And then we talk to them, we hear from them, and we build the relationships and see what companies could be interesting to us.
But how do they find you? How do people who don't have that network find you?
I think, often we talk about founders purely from a perspective like they're small babies. Yeah, let's help the founder, let's help so on. I'm all in founder friendly, try to be founder friendly VCs, but it's also the job of the founder and the CEO to do the homework, to see what are the VCs that are investing and to try to reach out. Maybe first through cold, of course, always warm interest appreciated, and then try to connect maybe with, in our case, for Deutsche Telekom, if anyone is building something in the space of that, with the local partners there, and they will probably refer you right to us. It's difficult, but the job of a founder and CEO is always difficult, right? So putting it on them.
Toomas.
Yeah, about those seagulls. As a startup founder once, how can one know ahead of time that investor is going to be a seagull? And I wasted my time over and over and over again on companies and then the investors that seem to be credible, seem to be good, seem to be having enough resources to deploy and everything. But in the end, after 9 months of back and forth and unlimited access to everything, they just disappear. How could one distinguish beforehand not to fall into that trap?
You're asking me. I really like the approach that Y Combinator has. So for example, Y Combinator has a list of VCs and the track record in communicating with the companies. Now, I don't know if it's the case. That's what they're publicly announcing, right? And then they advise the companies that are in Y Combinator, look, this VC will most of the time waste your time. I would recommend, since most of you don't have access to such thing, I think reference calls. I mean, I know it's reference emails. I know it's very burden, but at the end of the day, you're taking in capital, and not just capital. You're taking in a partner you're getting married to for next 10 years, right? So you should know about your partner who and what. So Thomas, to answer your question, I would recommend maybe if you can find somebody in the network or in these events and say, hey, what do you think about this? You know, what do you think about this investor? Or
one company's seagull is another company's goldmine.
I mean, it's always a difficult, right? So I wouldn't have a clear answer here. I would just suggest that one does as much homework as possible, right?
There's also something called Landscape that we have in Europe. Who's heard of Landscape? It's like it's like Glassdoor for VCs. So founders go on there anonymously and they rate the VCs that they've worked with, and where sometimes they are the gold mine for someone else. Often when you have 20 people say this VC farted in a meeting, you probably know you don't want to go. And that's actually one of the reviews on there, and it's been upvoted. It's actually ridiculous. So the Landscape is a really great place. But like you say, people do talk when you reach out. We are coming to you for questions, so please think of your most spicy questions. You have 60 seconds to think of it. But Tunya, I want to come to you again and talk a bit more about finding you and finding the capital. How do founders, say in this room, get access to capital if they are in an emerging market right now?
First of all, I want to add something to the previous question. So I definitely agree on the seagull investor comment. Unfortunately, I must fail you in that comment that we are not one of those investors. I myself lived in Budapest for 2 years, and all of our teammates in total, collectively, we spent at least 70% of our time in a year in Central Eastern Europe. And I moved to San Francisco, and one of my first agenda is to encourage and help our founders who would like to go to the US, while supporting them with our talent team to hire in the local talent landscape, to establish a tech shop in their team in Central Eastern Europe. So this is how we support our founders while opening to global markets, staying in Central Eastern Europe for the talent arbitrage. And one of the biggest reasons is that living in San Francisco, we've seen that the tech talent retention is really hard to establish in San Francisco as an emerging market founder. So, and I think Central Eastern Europe has one of those advantages of the very high quality tech talent pool, and we want them and always encourage them to benefit from it. For the second question, can you? How
do they find capital if they don't have the mature networks of sophisticated markets?
So I always say that the good investors are the ones who always pull out the unobvious founders. And I think we've done a really, really good job in finding those founders. And of course, like, we always want to catch that talent stream from the previous founders, exited founders, previous operators who have had a track record in some way, but we always want to encourage unobvious founders to find us. So we always predominantly organize events, especially for open source community. I myself launched my new series today, Tunya Bites. Please follow me on that. Actually, one of the reasons why I launched that series is that we found out over the past 3-4 years since we have started deploying our fund, is that actually the market pulled us into the dev tool, AML, data infrastructure markets. And we are a generalist investor, by the way. We are always open to explore new areas. We have gaming startups, fintech companies, but we actually realized that 70% of our portfolio is falling into that category, which is dev tool, AML, data infrastructure, while the local investor pool does not have that big of an operational experience in the tech area, and comparing to the other markets, like more mature markets, like in the Bay Area. So I always want to be on the safe side when it comes to content, but I always want to avoid from buzzwords. So the aim is that, actually.
So what I'm hearing is to find capital, we've got VCs, making sure that they're visible, network strongly, make sure you've got community. I'm sorry, I'm going to stop you because I really want to make sure that we've got time for a couple of questions. If you have a question, can you please wave your hand? And we've got a mic, a roaming mic that will come around for you.
Vedran, you don't have a question?
Listen, you've got VCs up here who have capital to deploy. Are you sure you don't have a question? If not,
Vedran here is an investor.
Great, I'll let you say what you were going to say, Ervin, because I cut you off.
Nothing substantial. I was just about to say, you have to work insanely hard. How to make yourself visible. I mean, everybody's going to say it. It's a buzzword. I'm not adding any additional value by providing this comment, but it's damn hard, right? You need to balance how many events you're going to go to, right? Because you want to be visible. You want to talk to us. So events like this, they're phenomenal to do so. But at the end, you need to build and execute, right? We will evaluate you based on what, especially us at Deutsche Telekom, at T.Capital, who are pouring in money from Series A onwards, right? We will judge you based on what you've built and how you're executing on things. So it's hard, but I think all three of us, if you would agree, are open to discuss even after the panel if you have any cool ideas that you would like to, at least from my end, approach us with.
Okay, my last question for each of you is, an emerging market you currently maybe don't invest in, what is an area that you are super interested in and why? What are you seeing from that space?
I would have to go with the deep tech, not in the sense of AI, but deep tech in the sense of physics and material science. Because in the end of it all, the world around us is made out of things, not code.
And a geographical area?
I mean, Croatia is a good start. I mean, I was there before anybody else 6 years ago, but it's still a good place.
Good answer in a room. Tunya?
Like, which one? Like,
Let's do both. We've got time. Vertical and geographical region.
I mean, obviously I'm biased. I mean, we cover Central Eastern Europe, so I would always stand by it. And we've so far discovered a lot of good startups from there, especially in the Southeastern Europe area. We have 4 investments. 2 of them are Croatian, so I would definitely agree with Toomas. The vertical is obviously, again, I'm biased, but dev tool, AML, data infrastructure.
Ervin, last but not least, ideally an area you're not currently investing in. Sorry? Ideally an area you're not currently investing in that you're excited about.
We're not currently investing in. Let me think about it. Actually, I think we have a pretty broad mandate, so it's going beyond core, which is in our sense, connectivity and so on. We have multiple areas. We do fintech, we do AI, we do deep tech as well. I would say maybe one of the areas that we currently do not invest in is probably anything very much hardware related that has fully, just because of the mandate. I think hardware, I'm very bullish on hardware. Don't get me wrong. I think that some challenges in hardware need to be solved, and I think there's a big opportunity for some of the people that will solve the challenges of scalability, but currently it's not something we're looking at.
And geographical?
Geographically, I think, I was thinking deeply about that because everybody says Eastern Europe, and I'm personally one who is pushing for, trying to find the gems in the region all over Eastern Europe besides, these big markets. But I would say that in general, this market is also getting discovered, right? So it's not like it's something hidden. So overall, wherever the cool company comes from, we don't mind. We're taking a look at it.
Amazing. Toomas, Tunya, Ervin, thank you so much for your time, and thank you to you.